welcome to another video from the Vickers MG Collection and Research Association. This one, I want to be talking through our book, A CANLOAN Officer. And back in June, Tom and I, one of the other directors, we went on a cycle ride around Normandy, some of the areas, over 3 days, and we also met up with Paul Woodage of World War II TV to look at some of the sites that Rex Fendick talks about in his book and try and match up some of the photographs that are in the book, the Rex's sort of, exclusive photos, not published anywhere else. We managed to match some of the locations that he took photos of with some great French local help. Herviette Post Office is one of those great examples. So what I wanted to do was share. It's only, it doesn't cover much of the book, to be honest. But we managed to spend a few days following Rex around and give you an insight into the content that's in the book. If you haven't got a copy, then please do order one. If you have got a copy, then watch these videos alongside that, and hopefully it'll provide some extra flavor, extra content. We do have all of Rex's journey around the world, actually, from Canada to the UK, into France, and up to Germany, and all the way back, all mapped onto Google Maps by Tom, so that you can follow that route as well. And we've managed to put some of the photos and everything in there. So hopefully you'll enjoy these clips. We didn't cycle the route in chronological order as Rex came ashore. He didn't land on D-Day, so we join him at a few different spots. I'll try and edit those into chronological order to make it easier to follow in the book, but that wasn't the order we cycled in. We cycled in the easiest route for us, and Normandy is there are some hills there. Having been away from cycling for a while, it was quite a struggle to get back into it. But we spent a couple of nights in Caen, and cycled the first day into Caen, bit around on the second afternoon, and then the third day back to Ouistreham to the ferry as well, and spent the second day in the morning in the van with Woody, going a little bit further afield and covering some more ground. So you'll sort of follow that through. We'll follow some of these maps. I'll show you what we did, and maybe it's a route that, again, alongside the book and everything, you could follow in the future. So as I say, hope you enjoy it. So day one on our ride basically saw us leave the ferry port, having got into Ouistreham, and we followed the coast road along the River Bella, Sword Beach, and then turned left up towards Colville, Montgomery, which was where 3rd Division's headquarters and most of the reserve troops and everything went into and stayed in for several weeks. So 2nd Middlesex, their headquarters was located nearby, and they ran their operations from there. So Rex remembers a little bit around Colville to Montgomery, where he met the commanding officer, company commander, and everything as well, Pat Weston. And then we cycled up towards Beerville-Beauville, up through that area there, up the Rue du Homme, up to Beauville, and then headed west towards Mathieu. Now this was a route that wasn't necessarily the flattest. There was a crossroads where we stopped and looked backwards across Hillman, the bunker complex there, the fortifications, went across Mathieu into this valley up there, and then through the village, up Le Mesnil, up to the Chateau de Mesnil. Obviously we got a bit faster there as well. It was getting a little bit later in the day, 4 o'clock, so we were starting to just look around things quite quickly. But we had a fair few hours a day, like down to Le Combe. So this area here is one that we'll cover, which is where Rex did his first shoot from, and then into the Royal Ulster Rifles location and the cemetery that is at Common-Plain. Down through Common-Plain itself, and down into Caen. So down into Caen, it was starting to get a bit later in the day, bit rush hour traffic, so we headed straight to the hotel. Didn't stop at any other locations on that day. Into the hotel location, which we chose. It's not the best hotel, not the best location, just outside Caen, but one where we were able to take our bikes to the room. So quite an important thing, actually, to get our bikes up and out of the way. Now, in the evening, we went down into Caen to the 3rd Division Memorial, had a look around there. And one of the things that surprised us, looking at the tableaus of all the regiments that are remembered there, is that the 2nd Battalion the Middlesex Regiment is not remembered on that memorial, which is a little bit disappointing, seeing as that was the purpose of our visit, to follow Rex's route as a 2nd Battalion Middlesex member. But they're not remembered. Some of the armoured regiments that work with them are, but sadly not the 2nd Middlesex. Also, into the evening, we went and visited the Garden Memorial with 3rd Division insignia and everything in there that is alongside the Caen Memorial Museum. So that was really interesting. Hadn't visited that. 2nd Ulster Rifles memorialised there as well. So, yeah, worth a visit. Now, our day 2 was actually, this is an afternoon ride. In the morning, we met up with Paul Woodage, World War II TV, and Woody took us out in his van, and we went over to the east of the Orne. So it was an area that would have been a little bit too cramped, a little bit too far to ride. Well, not too far to ride, but certainly we wouldn't have been able to stop and do what we did. We travelled the area quite well, but we didn't record our route. So this we will follow probably in Rex's sort of timeline a little bit more detail, but we went across up into Herreviette, and this is where we did match up one of those pictures up through Herreviette and then route to Troarn, up into Troarn, up this way, I think, if I remember rightly, and up into Troarn itself, where we then found some of the old railway line pics that Rex had taken, back down into Sonneville and around this way. And then in the afternoon, after we'd had some lunch with Woody, we went back over to Common-Plein, I think, if I can find it. Where are we? Perrier, Culver Montgomery, a little bit too far north. Look, we went over into Common-Plein again, and we had a little bit of a look around the area here, those locations again, before we had some lunch, and then we went back to the hotel. Woody dropped us off. He had some stuff to do in the afternoon, better than just taxiing us around, and then we started our ride again just after 1 o'clock, and we went to the coast. So our intention here was really just for a quick ride around Normandy, back down into, so not necessarily any of Rex's locations as such. I don't think we covered anything, but we did head up to the coast where Rex came ashore. So he came ashore and then went down into he came ashore at Gold Beach in here, and then went down through Vers-sur-Mer, and he actually went over to Bayeux into into one of the camps in this area, the reinforcement camps, and I think we located it. We'd have to check Tom's map for this, but we located it around here. So we sort of weren't following his route that day. It was a little bit too far over on the bikes. Normally surprisingly large when you're cycling around rather than bombing around in a car. But it's probably the best way to understand the terrain a little bit better as well, and also to give yourselves a little bit of time. So this dog leg here that you're seeing is, as we went in there, is actually the British Normandy Memorial. So we popped in there and had a look around that new memorial. That's probably why it's going to take us a little bit longer than, so let's just speed it up a little bit, because we spent a bit of time there. Not massive amount, but we were walking. So there we go, we got back on the bikes and along the front again into Courcelles-sur-Mer. We didn't go to the Juno Beach Museum this time, but then we cut back across country. And once we cut back across country, we did start to go and revisit some of Reg's locations. We went into the cemetery there, where there was a 2nd Middlesex grave that we'll talk a little bit more about, and look around some of the graves that are in there. So we did have a walk around there before we returned to the hotel again, through Mathieu. So actually we got a sort of a great cycle path alongside the road here, actually, in through Éperon, and back to the hotel for the evening. And then day 3 we will take a look at next. So day 3 saw us leave the hotel and head down through Caen. So we were going to take a relatively flat route after the quite not flat at all, downhill, into Caen, and this took into an area into the suburbs of Caen, that were not built. So actually, where we cycle up here, this was the edge of Caen, and some of the maps that we looked at, in the locations, everything to the east did not exist at this point. It was very much the wall was the edge of the city. So the wall where we leant our bikes up against was the edge of the city. So we had a look up there, did some footage, and then we followed the canal. Stopped here, and you can see across to some of the locations Rex was firing at. We followed the canal all the way up, and obviously this is quite an easy ride. We stopped a few times to take some additional photos, but following this line of the canal there was great until we then turned up to one of the forming up points that Rex had identified, and I think it's for Goodwood. We'll have to check. They identified a forming up point in a field. And so we went up there, and it was a really interesting view actually over into Caen. So I think he mentions you're looking at bombers and stuff flying over and bombing Caen, and he would have had an absolutely brilliant view from that point. Then went down and did the obligatory visit into the Pegasus Bridge Museum. So went in there for a little while, had a look round. Our ferry wasn't until later in the day, so we had that time to spend looking around in the museum, which is always pleasant and quite a nice location. So we spent some time there before we headed back off up the canal again to the ferry terminal. So there we go. That was our trip around Normandy. So in part 2, we will actually try and follow Rex's route rather than our route, and add a little bit more context and some readings from the book. So let's say if you haven't ordered the book, please do so, and you'll be able to follow it along with us. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like and share the video and subscribe to the channel. Please support us on Patreon if you're able to, and let us know of anything you'd like to see in the future. I look forward to hearing from you.